I'm going to call the business meeting to order. I'd like to call the business meeting of the Portland Board of Public Education to order. It is Tuesday, August 18th, 2020. The Portland Board of Public Education is meeting virtually through Zoom. May I please ask the superintendent to call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Mr. Atkinson.
Here.
Mr. Balfons.
Here.
Ms. Bondo.
Présente.
Mr. Burke.
Here.
Ms. Figdor.
Here.
Ms. Morioni.
Here.
Ms. Thompson.
Here.
Mr. Varro.
Here.
Ms. Brown. Mr. Casiel Reyes. Ms. Habib Saeed. Mr. Parrott. Ms. Yangala. And Chair Rodriguez.
Presente. And I misspoke. Today is Wednesday, August 19th, 2020. I had yesterday's date still there. Apologies. Although these days, who doesn't wake up just saying, like, what day is it today? All right. Superintendent, do you have the Pledge of Allegiance flag so we can display it? We'll get through that first.
We do. Greg, are you doing that, or do you want me or Aaron to do it? Here it is. Okay. Can you see it?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As part of my remarks, I want to go over the Zoom meeting platform and setup, and then I'll hand it over to the superintendent. I guess the procedures for the board meetings using Zoom. Just a reminder that all votes are taken by roll call. Board members are going to use the raise the hand feature on Zoom, which can be found under the participants window. If and when they want to address the board, I'll call onto your name. I'll acknowledge you as a speaker, and then I'll ask you to lower your hand after you're finished speaking. Any opportunity for public comment is going to be announced. Members of the public will also use the raise your hand feature provided by Zoom. This feature is either found on the webinar control bar at the bottom of the screen, or it can be found by clicking on your name on the list of attendees. When I call the name that is on your attendees login, you'll have 3 minutes to address the board. Should you, or rather, when you near the 3 minutes, I will address the speaker to see if additional time is necessary, and the board can grant an additional minute if it's necessary. At the end of that additional time that's granted, I will mute microphones so that we can try to use our time as best as possible during the public comment portion. I'll try to remind everyone of those procedures when we get to it, at least a summary of it. But I think that I wanted to get that out of the way at the beginning. One more note: as we did during the workshop, we have the simultaneous interpreting for our meeting. Is that correct, or was that Javier? We still have the simultaneous interpreting for our meeting, and I think those are all the things I wanted to touch on. So Superintendent, I think we're ready for your remarks.
I know that I'll be happy to do that, but I also know that we discussed at the end of the workshop that perhaps you wanted to move directly into the action items on the agenda for today, just so that we did not run over, and so I just want to remind you of that if you wish to do that.
Ms. Thompson, I see your hand raised.
I'm just wondering, Superintendent, are we going to have for hearing impaired or sign language? I know that there was, at the beginning, you were working that through. Is that going to happen? Because we have some people asking for that.
I don't believe we are prepared to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. So we can, yes, I think we can do that. We can take it, the item out of order and go right into the reopening plan motion. Does anyone have an objection to that? Seeing none. All right, so let me just pull it up on my screen and all right. So it is old business, consideration and action to approve the proposed 2020-2021 school reopening plan. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Ms. Thompson, second by Ms. Morioni. Superintendent, do you need to speak to the motion in any way right now? Okay, so do we have any board questions? So before we get started with the board questions, just to clarify, obviously we went over through the workshop, we went over a lot of the information and asked for clarification. So this is where I'm hoping any suggestions to either amend the recommendation or questions asking more specifically of changes to what is recommended. After we go through these questions, we'll have public comment. After the public comment, we'll have a board discussion. So board discussion is when I would appreciate board members then voice their more of their sentiments and their opinions, and just want to get this as expedited as possible in terms of action, and again involve the public in it. So sorry about that, but all right, Ms. Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. I just have a few quick questions, hopefully the superintendent. Can you clarify, I think there's some confusion, and I'm still confused around high school, the in-classroom instruction. From the survey, it said 90% of parents in high school requested to go back in person. And on one of the slides, and you clarified for me earlier, the Learning Center is for all levels, but we're saying for ninth graders, they're back into school. Are we saying for 10 through 12, they're coming back for at least one day? Or are we saying we're just making the Learning Center available? So it's help, but it's not instruction like the other students are getting. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, I'm going to ask Mr. Thompson to do that.
Thank you.
As we communicated yesterday, that we were, that the ninth grade in-person academic instruction is what's in person for ninth grade. 10th through 12th grade will happen virtually for their academic content. Then in the afternoons is the Learning Center time that's available, and it has a variety of purposes. There are some support classes for students who have additional services, additional special ed classes or potentially English language support classes. So it's hard to characterize it as just one or the other, but it is their primary academic instruction will happen in the morning, and primarily, I would say, in the afternoon, it is for support. And as you heard from the different schools last night, some are approaching it around more of kind of a grade level organization, others more around kind of course-based in monitoring those supports through the kind of technology and scheduling tools that the principal spoke about yesterday.
Have we, on that note, Assistant Superintendent Townsend, looked at potentially bringing them back in person for one day, whether it be, one day the 10th, one day the 11th, one day the 12th, because I think there's a lot of emails that we're receiving from students and from parents that they want their students to have at least one day, and the students want to be back at least one day in person and not count the Learning Center as actual instruction time. Has it been explored? Can we do that?
It's a challenge to be organized that way at both Deering and Portland, given the comprehensive high school structure, given the smallness at Casco Bay and their teaming structures there, that is a little bit more easily accomplishable. We recognize the desire. This is part of the feedback we've certainly heard in what we communicated yesterday in terms of striving to ensure that students have access at least one day. But because of the size of the schools and the different ways they're organized, it's not going to look exactly the same in terms of how we meet that goal across the three schools. But we recognize that desire. We're working the school teams in terms of figuring out the Learning Center model and how to make it most effective, are continuing to try and ramp up that expectation. I mean, we realize the initial, recommendation, which again was based on trying to have a safe start in opening. We're aware of many instances of high schools opening big kind of quickly and then having to close, and we're really trying to avoid that scenario. But we recognize the demand. We really everybody wants to see the 10th through 12th grade students and provide them those supports. And so the schools are working on plans to ensure that students can have access at least one day. But again, it's not going to look the same at each of our schools, which has been true of what's been true at all of our high schools for many, many years, is we're trying to get to the same outcomes, and we have different strategies to get there.
So it sounds like you have a phased approach.
Perspective on what that access would look like during the learning center.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the beginning part of your question, Javier.
Can you go into a little more detail around what learning center access would look like? I think that's something that I know Ms. Thompson would want to understand, and I think that there are others who would want to understand that.
So, as I'll try and, I think, Principal Jepson and Ms. Dame spoke to this last night as well. So that would look like for some students on some days, advisory would be part of what is in person. Additionally, some students would be brought in for a given course and be requested to come in, so to meet with their, Algebra 2 teacher in a small group to be able to provide support and, of the material that they've been covering during the academic time. In some cases, it might be a larger group of kids that would be in for support for an academic course, and they'd be housed in the auditorium so that they could be safely distanced. If there was a larger kind of review or activity learning experience that couldn't happen, remotely through a virtual means. And again, then some experiences may be the more kind of structured supports that happen in terms of the English learner supports or the specially designed instruction that happens for students with IEPs who receive those services. So those are a few examples of what it could look like.
So I guess my question to that is, do we have a phased-in approach for bringing them back? At least one day in person for instruction? Do we have any kind of phase-in plan for high school?
We've said that we would reassess by mid-October.
Okay.
So we do have a plan.
Okay. And then the other two questions I have in a different area other than high school is there are some students who spend their day in the resource room of the high school level in adaptive classes like PE, music, and art that the FLS students also go to. And the only exclusively regular ed classroom they go to is their homeroom. And so there's been some discussion around whether these students, they're not students who go to regular ed these are not students that go to regular ed with support. They're students who need low ratio individualized instruction and are below grade level. Have we thought about bringing them back with the ninth graders so that they have that attention?
Assistant Superintendent Nally, would you?
Yeah, and I was just trying to get in touch since, Deb, you are still here. Perfect. Why don't you speak to that?
Yeah, we have thought about that. We're starting out right now with our district special ed programs. And the students who are in that scenario where they receive a lot of special ed support would do their classes in the afternoons. They'd do their therapies in that afternoon session at the high school level.
Okay, so that'll be
your question.
That'll be conveyed to those families, because I think there's some questions around that as well. They're confused a little bit about how that will all happen.
Okay.
And the last question I have in Superintendent, I'm not sure who it's for, but it's around the BREATHE program, and there's been a lot of questions around that. There's in past years with a later start time, they've found that behaviors and restraints during that time were increased and so on and so forth. And they went back to another earlier start time. And now we're talking about moving them back to approximately 9:45 to 3:15. And just wondering if you could talk a little bit about that. And then also, some of those students are more challenging students, and so extra precautions. I know that we've talked about face masks and so on and so forth, but are there certain things that they're going to be trained or talked to about, but with physical management? And then lastly, about feeding. It's my understanding that a lot of those students typically come to school without any food. Their breakfast and snack is all provided by the school. So I know that's a three-part question there, but
Well, let's take them one at a time.
thank you.
So let's start with the time. I know that Eric Wood, our Director of Transportation, is here, and he can talk a little bit about the complexity of trying to run all of the different routes that we have to run. For those, and I know you were a part of the operations committee meeting, so we went and had a deep dive into our transportation structure, and the reason that we structured our times the way that we did is so that we would be able to run physically distanced bus routes. So in essence, we need to be able to run twice through what we would normally just run once. And so, that is sort of a fundamental building block of this. And then I don't know, Eric, if you can speak specifically, or if Malia, you might have anything that you can add to our perspectives on the later start for Breathe. So let's take that one first.
Deb, do you want to speak to that, or do you want me to speak to that? I guess, Deb, chime in if you want to say anything. I think you're on mute, but I believe your question, Member Thompson, was about if we're concerned about a later start time for the program based on experiences in the past with having to move that. That's not something that I've been in conversations with the team about as a concern. I know that the team was consulted in the whole transportation process. I think that the program itself, I don't know if you're referring to back when we were at Bayside, potentially, but the way that we've structured the program, the protocols, the processes, et cetera, I think have been and continue to be refined. And so I think it's really more about our protocols and our systems and our structures, which is a huge focus in that program in general, and certainly will be a huge focus for the first few weeks as we are together with the staff getting prepared for the kids. Deb, would you say anything else about that from your historical perspective of?
Yeah, I don't have a historical perspective about the restraint and seclusion information, and I've kept that data for the district since 2012. So I really don't have a perspective on whether their specific data. I'm sure there's insight from the staff that work there, but I don't have that information. But I do believe the start and end time did have a lot to do with just how we could transport students for special transportation.
So Deb, while you're speaking now, maybe we could move to the second part of her question, which has to do with, I believe, additional precautions as it relates to potentially any physical restraint. Is that correct?
Yeah. And also personal protective equipment.
Yeah. And I know we have a plan for that. So Deb, do you want to speak to that?
We do. So the Department of Education's already issued additional precautions for PPE use and procedures for students who are at risk for more physical interaction. So this would include students who might be in the physical restraint area, or students who need, medical attention and toileting and things like that. So they've already issued that guidance, and they've put out directives about the additional PPE that would be required, and have guidance on procedures. And we're working with Tina to make sure that the school nurses in each of those locations do training on that heightened safety protocol.
And then the last one was about the food, and it is no different from any of our children. Many of our children depend on school nutrition to get their nutrition, and we will absolutely do the same for our students in Breathe that we do for all of our students. And so when they arrive at school, first thing that they will do, if they were hungry, right, they will have access to breakfast. And then, so we will continue to do what we've done all along for them. And I don't know, Jane, if there's anything in particular that you want to highlight for nutrition services at Breathe.
No, I agree with what you had to say, and that we can add access during the school day for those students if need be.
And I just see that Eric is sitting, or in my screen is forlorn next to you there. I think we skipped you, Eric. I'm so sorry. You probably have the key to the understanding this, so I'm sorry about that. We skipped ahead.
No, that's all right. I think that in the past we've transported Breathe students with the school that they were specifically attending since we moved from Bayside. And so last year they would arrive with more, but then they would be released early. And this year with the schedule, the way it's set up, we can bring them in with the other students, but we have to come back later so that we can transport them in the way that we should transport. And so that's really all it boils down to, is that we would bring them in like we have in the past, but then we would come back for them at a time later, and the best time that fit was 3:15.
So Superintendent, I guess, and I understand the whole transportation thing, and we were talking about in the operations, and I read the presentation that Eric presented as well. But I'm just wondering the trade-off, I know that, of course, the busing is the issue, but the behaviors, I guess it's behaviors across the district for all of our students, but more so these particular students, do we anticipate, or I guess it's hard to anticipate, but where they are that much more fragile in some ways by changing the times and changing up everything, do we anticipate more issues with our staff there, or?
We're in a pandemic. So I think that, we have to understand that everybody is disrupted. As right. Eric pointed out, and he did have the key to the kingdom because he brought back that recollection that, what we're really talking about is transporting students to Lyman Moore. Mm-hmm. And, because that's where the program is located. And what we are doing is continuing to bring the students at the same time as we bring students to Lyman Moore. So we've changed the start times for our middle schools to a later start time. And so otherwise we would have Lyman Moore with with the Breathe students and no other students in the building. So that it would, sort of work against one of the reasons that we actually moved the program into a school. So I think that, that is also part of the understanding. So there are trade-offs associated with all of this. As Ms. Mullis said, we don't have any, data evidence that earlier or later start time increases those behaviors. Of course, we're not on the ground in the same way that the people that sent you that email are. And so it's, they probably have, deeper and definitely closer to the ground insights into, what that experience is. And, we will continue to monitor it like we always do. And we are, crossing our fingers and hoping that we will, soon be able to go back to normal and, at that point, return to an earlier start time for the middle schools. And so.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. I'm all set. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. Ms. Figdor?
Yes, thank you. I simply wanted to do two things. I wanted to clarify for members of the public what the motion is right now. And so the motion before the board is to approve the reopening plan as proposed by the superintendent and his team. So once the board finishes with their questions, we'll then open it up to public comment. And I believe we're now probably in hour 8 of the board having an opportunity to really get excellent in-depth information about our plans. And I'm so appreciative of the level of detail and the way we've been able to engage. I do really encourage us to try to give, as soon as we can, the public an opportunity to participate in this process, since we didn't enable the public to participate at all last night. And it's already after 7 tonight. So I hope we can quickly get to hear directly from the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Victor. Mr. Burke?
Thank you, Chair. Not trying to prolong things. I have 2 questions for the superintendent related to possible motions that I understand would come after public comment. So the first question is, Superintendent, yesterday we heard about the outstanding updated plans for outdoor learning in the district. And at that time I had shared that there was a motion I might bring to the floor. It seemed a lot of that was not necessary due to the commitments, but I just want to hear if a motion that demonstrates a board commitment to the plans for outdoor learning is necessary or helpful to demonstrate full district support for those plans. That's my first question.
I don't believe that it is necessary. I think that we attempted to express our commitment to outdoor learning, and I think you and I spoke about that before the meeting yesterday. I think Malia and her team have done an amazing job of getting us to a place. Erin as well, working with the architects to get us to this place. So I hope that there's no question about our commitment to doing that. And I think you also understand the complexities of trying to come up with, a motion that locks in a certain, percentage of time or things along those lines that we then cannot execute on. And I would caution the board against doing that.
Yeah, and I wouldn't bring forth a motion on a commitment to a percentage of time, but just didn't know, standing in solidarity with the good work that has happened would be more the spirit of the motion. And I hear you that you feel that that's redundant. So question 1 answered, thank you. The second is, if we were to begin remote, for what duration would be your tolerance or recommendation? A month, a trimester, other?
That's not my recommendation, so I would not. I don't have an answer to that question. I think, we've tried to make the case for why we think that we are ready to bring students back in the measured and cautious way in which we've said that. I do just, I want to caution you about the implications of remote, is that, all of the things that we talked about during the staffing portion of the discussion of the workshop would, basically get pushed off into whenever it is that we determined that it was appropriate to bring students back. And so at that point, we may find ourselves that we can't actually bring people back. So I just, I think that, I would recommend against it. I've recommended what I've recommended, and I stand by that. Understanding full well and trying to outline for you today what some of those really significant challenges are around both the level of community partnerships that we have available now, the access to resources for the second half of the year for some of the positions that we believe that we need to put in place, and all of those things, as well as obviously the staffing challenge. So.
Okay, thank you, Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Burke. Ms. Morioni?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for all the hard work, superintendent and staff, and many people that have helped. My questions I have 3 questions, and I'll make them quickly. First question is, Superintendent, what was the deadline for families that want to opt for their students to do the virtual academy? Is it Monday? Monday, the 24th?
Right.
And then how are they able to do that? Is it online form that they fill out, or how specifically do they?
That's correct. There will be an online form. I don't know if it's up there yet. I know it was...
I can speak to that. It's not out there yet. We were holding it because we didn't have a decision from the board as to how we're coming back to school, and felt like we needed to know that so families knew. So it will be live tomorrow, presuming we come to a vote this evening. And it will be on our website and emailed out as well. In addition to that, as I said last night, we will be following up with email confirmation to the families who already indicated a desire to be in remote academy through the surveys we sent out previously.
And just to, again, for the community's sake too, the number of positions or spots for the virtual academy?
We do not have a cap.
Okay. Thank you. And then the other question related to my reference yesterday to fire evacuation plan for every school in the district. Will every school have a consistent plan in terms, maybe not necessarily, from what I understood with medical staff, it wasn't necessarily hammered out quite yet, but if staff, so who they know to contact if they have concern about a specific student and or maybe a student's refusing to wear their mask and or, I mean, there's just various scenarios, but is there going to be like a point person? Is there going to be any type of written plan that all schools will have once students start back?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And then the final third question is, what will happen if we mandating wearing masks? I mean, are we mandating this? And let's say again, a student was refusing to wear a mask.
It would be a disciplinary issue in the same way. I mean, we would obviously try to do everything we can to de-escalate and to reason. I mean, we've talked at length about this is, a teaching institution and a teaching process, and we're approaching this from, multiple angles to educate students. I think Dr. Pat did a great job of talking about, you wear your mask, it keeps me safe. I wear my mask, it keeps you safe. So I think that we start there, but obviously if somebody, said, I'm not coming, I'm not coming to school if I have to wear my mask, we'd say that's unfortunate. You're in the remote academy because, if you come to school, you have to wear your mask.
Okay, thank you. And I think, again, the clearer we can be with families and students around, again, the expectation of these protocols, I think is great. Thank you so much. That was all.
All right. I don't see any other hands raised. I have a question, and this actually might be a better question for the next motion about the calendar. So the calendar that we're going to approve later on has the timeline based on the recommendation right now, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. I think what I was going to bring up, I might wait till we get to that point because it'll be more appropriate. And I think what's right was, yeah. Okay, so having said that, if there's no other questions from board members, we're going to open it up to public comment. Before I do that, I want to go over the rules again. Excuse me. All right, so any member of the public that's in attendance through the Zoom or that's an attendee on Zoom can use the raise your hand feature found on the participants window. Excuse me. I will call your name, and once I acknowledge your name, you'll have 3 minutes to address the board. I ask that you please start with your name and your address, and I'll interrupt you as you're nearing the end of your 3-minute mark, If you need additional minutes, we'll grant you 1 additional minute to wrap things up. And then at the end of that additional minute, I will mute your microphone so that we can get to the next speaker. I believe that covers it all. I'll try to, if this goes for much longer, I'll try to remind everyone of the rules. And in the past, we've had the chat box used as helpful just to let people know who is up on the queue to speak, because I understand that the attendees cannot see the list of other people that are here. So I think some people have found that helpful in the past. I think Ms. Victor is signaling that she'll do that. Okay, so having said that, we're going to go ahead and start. First person that I have on the list of attendees is Penelope. So, oh, I got to get my timer.
Hello, can
Penelope,
you hear me?
Yes, we can. Give me a second. I want to get my timer out. Sorry. All right, go ahead, Penelope. We can hear you loud and clear. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. I am the parent of a high school junior. I feel that...
Can you give your full name and your address, please?
I'm sorry. Yes, Penelope St. Louis, Rosemont Avenue, Portland, Maine. I'm the parent of a high school junior. I feel like grades 10 through 12 are being left behind in your reopening plan. I have read all of the documents that were publicized by the superintendent's office. I have listened to all of the testimony and the information that was presented last night and this evening. The overwhelming message to me is that students need to be in class with instruction to succeed. Principal Pierce probably encapsulated it best when he said that any harm from in-class instruction outweighs the risk of returning these high school students to in-class instruction. The medical professionals that testified last evening also agreed that in-class is possible. I have spoken with advisors to the CDC who had input into the guidelines that were published. The people that I have spoken with also agree that for high school students, in-classroom instruction in Cumberland County is more than appropriate. However, with the recommendation made to the board, grades 10 through 12 are being left behind. At best, they are being overlooked, and at worst, they are being disregarded. Let's be frank. This, quote, learning center is no different than what was offered to my student this spring. What was available, and she took advantage of it, did not succeed. Unfortunately, she learned very little. All other municipalities surrounding Portland are returning their high school students, all of them, to in-classroom instruction in some capacity. I trust that Portland can do the same and not leave these 3 classes behind. Now, that being said, I've questioned what the re-entry plan would be if there's a reevaluation.
You have about 15 seconds left.
Okay, the reevaluation plan to me seems non-existent. If we reevaluate in October and then we plan to come back in November and then we implement in December, we're back where we started from, which is these students don't have any classroom instruction until January. I urge you to modify the superintendent's recommendation to allow grades 10 through 12 to return to in-classroom instruction 2 days a week. I actually beseech you to do that. Thank you all for all of your time in this. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you, Penelope. All right, next we're going to go to Michelle Amato.
Hi there, can you hear me?
If we can.
Excellent, thank you. My name is Michelle Amato. I live at 93 Ashmont Street in Portland. I'm the mother of a rising high school senior this year. The first thing I want to say is that last year we did actually experience remote learning in a positive way. I want to thank all of you first for all the work you're putting in on this, and then also her teachers. Teacher in the Portland Public Schools, and I am as excited, if not more excited, to get back to school as our students are. I know Marnie actually knows me, and I know she knows I'm a very exuberant person. I really am psyched to get back to school, but I also want to tell you that I'm nervous, and the reason I'm nervous is because I go to the Y 2 days a week to swim, sometimes 3 days a week. When I get to the Y, I have to sign in. I'm given a pen that I have to then put into a separate batch that's then going to be sanitized before anyone else can touch it. When I walk into the Y, there are only 24 people that are allowed in the entire facility at one time. I'm given a sanitation bottle that is fresh. I have to wipe down any surface that I touch, and upon leaving, I have to leave that sanitation bottle in a separate bucket so that they can then sanitize the sanitation bottle before anyone else touches it. So, and I also just want to point out that all of you are at home and none of you are in the same room right now. I want to make that really clear that I just notice that we are still kind of afraid to get together, that we are still sort of following these guidelines, and that I just want us to be very thoughtful in this approach. I'm 100%, I'm desperate to get back to school, but I'm also desperate to do it safely, very safely. So thank you very much. And please remember that we just want to be safe. There's nothing else. We just want to be safe. So thank you. Have a great night. Thanks for all your time.
Thank you, Michelle. Okay, next we're going to go to Joe Conroy. Joe?
Thank you. Joe Conroy, and I live on Pitt Street in Portland. As the parent of a junior at Portland High School, it's really hard for me to understand why grades 10 to 12 are being offered so little. I echo the comments of Penelope a few minutes ago. We find ourselves at a point where there are only a handful of positive cases in the state at this point. The governor has given our schools the green light to resume in-person instruction, and kids are already behind after we learned in the spring that remote learning is a wholly inadequate approach. As Derek Pierce pointed out last night, starting the year remotely is the worst possible scenario. I think the district has to tell us under what circumstances they're going to bring high school students back. They spent the summer producing a plan outlined in their 40-page brochure. Clearly, they were anticipating the yellow scenario, and it seems like they're unwilling to abandon that work for something that's more suited to the current reality. I don't believe that saying we're going to reassess in October passes as a plan. It's not really a plan. This virus could very well be with us for the entire school year, and how many years of education are we willing to sacrifice, and waiting for what conditions? I would like to know why providing an adequate education is somehow less of a priority than all the other essential work that's happening, resuming now or has never even stopped at all. I'm fully convinced that high school students in Portland can return to school safely, take social distancing and wearing masks seriously, and don't have to have so much taken from them at such a cost. If the district is not willing to do that at this time, they at least ought to tell us in detail under what circumstances they will provide education again. If Catherine Morrill can successfully reopen safely, so can Portland's high schools, and public education is an essential service. I urge a modification to address the inadequacy of remote learning for grades 10 to 12. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Okay, next we're going to go to Mary D.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Mary.
It's actually Mary D's wife, Susan Hibbard, from Orkney Street in Portland. I have a question and a few comments. I have an incoming freshman and an incoming 11th grader, high school. And I guess my question is, I didn't hear very much about this. I stayed on last night till almost midnight, and I didn't hear very much about the buses. And I'm wondering what we're doing to keep the bus drivers safe and the students riding the buses. I saw on the video and heard about the children sitting, one per seat, but there's no capacity, I believe, on the school buses to keep the bus drivers 3 feet away from the children. On the video, it looked like there was no bus driver in the bus when the children board, but that would be illegal. So I'm just wondering about that. That's my question. And then, and that wasn't a question about high school. My kids are in high school, but obviously the bus question is for other children. My comments relate to, I guess, the first and third speaker. I would echo some of what they said. We would love it if there were some faster option of at least one day of in-person learning for 10th, 11th, and 12th graders. I think it is at least as essential as, driving through McDonald's or other things that are open. And I'm worried, I didn't understand when the first speaker spoke that a reassessment would happen in October, but then planning in November, and that by the time anyone actually got an actual day of in-person education, that it would be pretty much the end of the semester. I don't know if that's true or not, but I'd like to, I guess, hear if that is. I think we would really love some in-person learning for our incoming 11th grader. I think I had one more comment, but I've lost it. So that's it for now. Thank you. And I really do appreciate all the work that's been done. I think the learning center ideas, the outdoor learning, so much great thinking has been done. Things that I think will change education in the future, but will keep even after COVID. So I really do appreciate everything, but those are my questions and comments.
Great, thank you, Susan. So just to be really clear, it's hard to directly answer your questions right now, so that way the public comment doesn't take on too long. But just to address some of your, we might be able to address this during discussion. And I know that the board during our operations committee meeting last week covered transportation pretty in depth, and even addressed some of the protocols that you were speaking about that pertain to the drivers. So really good questions, and I know that the board has had an opportunity to review those, but we'll try to touch up on it later. Next, Krista Vo. Krista?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. My name is Krista Vo. I live on Danforth Street, and I'm a mom of 4 Reiki kids. I'm also a law student, and I wanted to share 2 concepts that I learned over the last year that keep coming to mind as this discussion takes place. The first one is the idea of informed consent. Black's Law Dictionary, which is a resource that we use to define legal concepts, defines it as a person's agreement to allow something to happen made with the full knowledge of the risks involved and the alternatives. So I really just think that the choice to either return in person or to be fully remote for the year needs to be an informed one for all families. And I think that staff requests should not be considered until that informed consent can be gained from all families, because they are so interconnected. We can't make the full decision without all the information. And I realize that everyone is working really hard, and there's just not a lot of information to be had all around, and that definitely makes it challenging. The second concept that I want to talk about is a breach of duty of care, which is required to establish a claim of negligence. I'm not saying that anyone is being negligent, it's just something I've thought of that keeps coming to my mind. So in order to establish that a breach has occurred, you have to show that there was a substantial risk of harm, that the risk was foreseeable, and that a reasonable person under the same circumstances would have taken precautions against the risk. To me, there's a lot of risk right now. I think Maine is in a good spot. We do have a uptick in cases happening right now, so I think some of the information will reflect that, as we see it daily updated. There was a pretty significant outbreak at a wedding in Millinocket. I'm sure some of you saw that in the news, that out of 65 people attending, 28 people had tested positive. I really just don't want to see that happen, and I don't want schools opening to be a contributing factor to that. It really concerns me, especially given that we have very vulnerable students and staff. And I just want to mention one thing also that I have heard from a lot of parents as a concern with the hybrid model, which is the lack of available childcare for the days when their children will not be in school. Also, some parents will have to work much later than school is out on those days when they are in school. And
Krista, your time's almost up.
okay, and 62 slots of childcare will probably not even meet the needs of staff. So I hope we can find a solution that is really workable for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Krista. All right, next we're going to go to Ilma Lopez.
Hello.
Hello, Ilma.
Hi, how are you?
Great.
So my name is Ilma Lopez, and I'm a mom of a second grader. She's going to be in second grade next year. She goes to Reiki, and I live in 145 Harris Avenue in Portland. And first of all, I want to say thank you for all the effort. And it's not an easy position to be a teacher. It's not an easy position, definitely, to be a superintendent. And thank you for everything that you guys have done or are doing. So the biggest thing that I have two questions. So the first one is, how are we going to, so we work with the food insecurity, and one of the biggest things for me is schools is a safe place for so many of our kids in the community. Is the place where they're safe from home if they have any issues at home. Is a place where they get their meal. So how can we ensure that those kids that need it the most, I'm not saying that my daughter doesn't, but how do we ensure that those kids that need it the most are able to be in the schools, are able to attend in the classroom? How are we going to keep our kids safe from home? And how many students can you have per classroom? Do you have any cap? Like, how are we going to ensure? I would rather I have the choice to have my daughter at home. So I would rather have my daughter at home, making sure that her spot is taken for one of these kids that need it the most. We have a choice, some of these kids don't. So how can we do that as a school system? How can you guys do that? So that's the first one. And the second one that I have is, as a mom in this case, do you guys have any rules, any regulations, any goals? Like, how can we keep our kids on track? Because as a parent, it's a really hard decision to make sure that, yes, I do have the choice to have her at home, to make sure those kids that need it the most get to go to school and get to have food and get to have a safe place. But if I keep her at home, how do I know that she's learning what she has to learn? How do I know that she's reaching all the milestones that she has to reach in second grade? So if it's anything that you guys are going to put out, how do we work? And I'm sorry, I lied. It's 3 questions. And the third one is, as a parent, what can we do to help the school system? What can we do to help you? What can we do to make this easier for all of you guys? And thank you again for your time.
Thank you, Irma. Okay, next we're gonna go to Kayla Siegel.
Hi, yeah, Siegel. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kayla Ruthier, formerly Kayla Siegel. I live at 1167 North Road in North Yarmouth. I teach in the Bridge Elementary Functional Life Skills program at Talbot Community School. I reached out to board members last week expressing my own concerns and the concerns of many of my team members regarding a hybrid return. I thank the board members and administration for taking teachers' concerns and questions into consideration when making decisions tonight. I acknowledge the abundance of information that is being considered in making these decisions. Based on recent comments and answers provided by administrators over the past few days, I would like to further express two of the many concerns I have. Firstly, it was stated at last night's meeting that the Bridge FLS program will need 3 additional ed tech staff to support student needs beginning September 14th. This is a tall order to fill. Pandemic aside, it often takes us months to find a highly qualified ed tech to work in our program. 3 staff in a matter of 3 weeks is unheard of. Furthermore, training new staff in 3 weeks' time, while also planning for programming, scheduling, setting up classroom space, communicating with families, meeting with staff, etc., does not seem a sufficient amount of time for training. And this is assuming that 3 staff will be hired next week, which again does not appear realistic. Additionally, new hired staff will not have exposure to working with the students in our program until the first day of school. They will be thrown into the work, having to work one-to-one with a student with high-intensity needs with minimal support from supervisors who will also simultaneously be working with a student one-to-one. Secondly, I would encourage board members to get further clarification about additional space that will be provided for the Bridge FLS program at Talbot School to accommodate all students. Once all students are in person full-time, we will have a total of 17 students, and depending on ability to hire new staff, one-to-one adult support for each student with a total of 34 people within 2 classroom spaces. In addition, therapists are integrated within our program, bringing 4 more staff into the equation. How will we accommodate this many people in 2 classrooms while also honoring social distancing for students with intense needs, including behavioral needs such as bolting and flopping? Until there is a guarantee of more space available within our school building, I would deem this a problem that has not been solved. Finally, I want to acknowledge my understanding of the importance of in-person learning for all students, especially those students in specialized programs such as the Bridge program. My teammates, including ed techs, therapists, and myself, truly get it. We are the ones doing the job every day, so we are well aware of how important and enriching in-person interactions are for our students. With this said, I do not think the district is prepared to open the Bridge FLS program for a hybrid model and do not feel confident that we will be ready for September 14th. I urge the board to consider these very important points when making their decision. I feel it would be in the best interest for all to begin the school year as remote, allow for surrounding, less vulnerable districts with sufficient resources to open hybrid first, and reevaluate once we have more data from these school districts. I thank you all again for your time and consideration and acknowledge your efforts in making this very difficult decision.
Thank you, Kayla. Okay, next, we're going to go to Carrie Foster. And Carrie, before we get started, I just want to remind the people that are in the attendees list that we would have interpreters available if you need them, or if anyone that's interested in addressing the board, that we do have our interpreters available. Carrie?
Okay. Hello, Carrie Foster, PEA president and resident of Danforth Street. I also actually want to note that, speaking of interpreters, I might speak too quickly for them since I'm trying to stay within my time, but I did email Betsy my comments, so I'm hoping that if it's helpful, she can forward them to our parent and community specialists, which might make it easier to translate. So I do know that you've gotten a ton of emails and communication from families, community members, and educators, and I'm so grateful for the engagement of the board with this. I've been following districts around the state and country, and I would not trade this state, this district, this team for any of them. People have been thoughtful and collaborative in an emotional time of just insanity and insomnia, and it's been hard. But I appreciate that team. Anyway, I know you've read those and you have a very good idea of how your educators are feeling. We do share the want, the need, really, to go back safely for the benefit of our students. And we share the fear that our parent community specialist noted earlier that our families are feeling as well. These past 2 nights have given those of us watching an additional 8 or so hours worth of information, and it's been really helpful. And as someone noted last night, for every question answered, more pop up in its place. as the boots on the ground, so to speak. We need to be really clear on those in order to do our jobs effectively, keep our students safe, and also offer them the academic rigor and social and emotional supports that they need. Staff, even now, has an incredible amount of unanswered questions. These presentations have been super informative and thoughtful on a big picture level, but we're thinking about our specialized roles in classrooms. The CO team, with Aaron Townsend especially, has been really helpful in trying to set building level meetings to address those things, but we're cramming so much new stuff in so quickly that educators still know very little about the details of their own position. Earlier tonight, Superintendent Botana posited that waiting never helps. Now, he and his team have been working unflaggingly at an impossible task, and thank you, by the way. The city is lucky to have that kind of leadership, and I so appreciate it. But on that particular statement, I disagree. From an educator's perspective, it felt impossible to make a decision without knowing what a return to school would look like, and that uncertainty is a huge factor. When we know facilities are in order, and they really are on their way to being that way, but when they're fully in order, what our schedule looks like, when the precautions look like, and they're extensive and impressive, but we've only seen that if we've attended these 2 very long meetings. And at that point, we're going to be able to make an informed decision about what's best for our own health and our family's health, and then focus on our students. Beyond that, even a couple of weeks gives HR to have conversations with everyone, figure out who might be okay with accommodations that don't involve remote teaching, a leave, or a resignation, and have a better plan in place for who's in what position. And finally, we can benefit from learning from the successes and challenges of districts around us, as was just mentioned. We're your staff. Our community needs us, and we need to be there for our students and for our own families. If we start remote, we can work out all these robust but not quite finished plans, and we can make sure we do it because we're ready and not because there's a date on the calendar that tells us to report to a building. So thank you for that consideration, for all of your consideration, and for all of your hours. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Carrie. All right, next we're going to Anna F.
Hi, this is Anna Fink from Cumberland Ave. I have 2 students going to Reiki, an incoming kindergartner and a 5th grader. And it's not news to any of us, this is why we're here, but it strikes me that we're in the midst of a pandemic. And a pandemic is not forever. It is a now situation. And it calls on us to think about things differently, which is what we've been doing. But it also calls on us to prioritize and make really tough decisions that we wouldn't otherwise make, but not for the situation we're in. And there are 2 questions that really face us. One is, how do we educate our students? And the other is, how do we keep them safe? And I urge us to really consider them in the order of how do we keep our students and our teachers safe and our staff safe, and then how do we educate? Almost every company in the state that can afford to keep their employees home is keeping them home. And across the state, Maine has done a phenomenal job taking precautions to limit the spread of COVID-19. And we're doing it well. We've got low numbers. Unfortunately, the reality is that if we change our behavior, the numbers will change. And so it's just like if you go to the gym, you stay fit. If you stop going to the gym, you don't stay fit. And so we open up schools. It's my view that the numbers will go up. And it's not a matter of when, or it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And when those numbers go up, we will go on remote. And so every dollar, every hour that we spend on getting into the schools for all of the very good reasons that we desperately want our kids in schools, for their safety, for their nutrition, for the connection, for their mental health, for their education, all of that is spent on the buildings and the preparation. It's spent for the number of weeks between now and when we go remote. Is that 4 weeks? Is that 6 weeks? And maybe it's 8, but in doggedly pursuing something that we may just need to accept is out of reach for us in this pandemic, is not the right priority, we're spending resources that we can't get back. We're putting time and effort into something that is fleeting, when there's an inevitability that demands the best of us, that demands us spending time and effort to be able to do remote well and figure out what are those distant in-person once-a-week connections that we can make? What are those teaching tools that we can do? How do we do that? Because We know it's coming. Pursuing the in-person, we're losing time, we're losing money. I also fear we're losing teachers from the profession. So remote's inevitable. I commend you on all that you're doing. I fully support whatever decision is made. I'm on the PTO and I'll help Reiki do it as well as they can. But I encourage you to really consider the investment that we're not making in an inevitability by spending time and money on in person. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Okay, next we're going to go to Amy Reed.
Hi,
Amy?
can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so my name is Amy Reed. I live at 17 Ray Street, and I am an elementary teacher in the district. I wanted to start out by thanking you guys for everything that you all have all done, and saying that I am proud to be part of the Portland School District, because I feel that we are very prepared opposed to other districts. Obviously, I think probably like most teachers, I do feel scared to go back. There's nothing that I want to be doing more than being with my kids 5 days a week. And so one thing I was thinking about, I know that virtually for high school of 10 through 12, they're thinking about virtual the whole time. But we're potentially talking about bringing back the elementary kids, K through 5, in the middle of October, if everything goes well, for 5 days of learning. So I was just a little confused on that, because I do feel that the younger students would have a harder time complying with the protocols and the safety regulations other than the high school students. So I was confused by that. Another thing that I might have missed was I just wasn't sure if it had been talked about for the staff to get tested before they go back, because I know for me, that would give me some peace of mind, and I would feel more comfortable, because obviously we're going to be around a lot of people. I think I would feel more comfortable with that being done if all staff had to at least be tested. And then my last thing was, you mentioned the form that's coming out Monday online for the virtual opting out or staying at home. I'm just thinking of some of my students and families who don't speak English and don't have technology at home. Are they going to be aware of that, and are they going to have support in filling that out and understanding what really the form is? So that was just another thing that I was thinking about. But I wanted to, again, thank you guys for your time and all of the time that you put in. The details that you have worked out have been very extensive. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Amy. Next, Jody Stalin. Jody?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, thank you for taking the time to hear me, and thank you all for doing such a great job. I live at 96 Homestead Ave, and I have a 10-year-old that goes to the Breathe program. And actually, when I raised my hand, I had a statement to make, but now I just kind of have two questions. One, if they went all remote, would it be daily? And how long would the teachers be on with the students? Because this spring, they were maybe on an hour out of the whole day. And two, the Breathe students are in a smaller classroom. So are you still planning on waiting for them October 13th to go all 5 days as well?
So, Jody, just to be really clear, the public comment section is really not intended to be, I paused your time, by the way, it's not intended to be a back and forward.
Yeah.
Like I'm saying, we can probably try to address a lot of the questions that come up during our discussion, which will happen after the public comment is over. But it would be, as I'm sure you can imagine, it would be really challenging to manage time if we had a back and forth kind of Q&A session with every member of the public. So what we try to do when these big questions come up, we try to address them during our discussion after this. But again, it would be challenging to kind of pause and address each question as it comes up. So does that make sense?
It does make sense. So I guess what I'll say is...
You have about 2 more minutes of your 3-minute time.
Okay. I guess that if, I think all kids should go to school 10th, 11th, and 12th. They all need the teachers to teach them, and they need that social emotional support, not just the younger kids or the Breathe program, but if they were to go all remote, my concern would be hopefully you guys would have the teachers online more actually, teaching each class with them instead of the way it was last time. So I appreciate everything you've done. I know you guys are all working hard and you're doing a great job. Just a couple suggestions. I don't know which way I'm going to go now after listening to everybody else. Thank you.
Thank you, Jody. Right, next we're going to go to Avery Camilla.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, good. Hi, my name is Avery Camilla, and I'm a mom of a second grader. I live in the Bayside neighborhood. And first off, I just want to thank everybody so much for the hard work and the tough choices that you guys are all being forced to make in this challenging situation that we're all in. I appreciate it so much. And I can see clearly that whatever you guys decide, there are going to be some people who are going to be upset. And so, that is just a tough situation. And I really appreciate the leadership of all of the board members and the members of the leadership team in the schools and all the teachers and people who are working so hard. And I don't have a question. I just felt I would share my perspective. My son, like many, didn't do great with the online learning. We tried our hardest, but he doesn't do well with screen time to begin with. His main need at this point is socialization and the social emotional sort of piece. So my husband and I were intending to send him back full time. However, under the terms of the proposed hybrid plan, it just is really striking us as so disruptive in terms of the short amount of in-person instruction and also just the social awkwardness of social distancing, which is a reality we're all living with everywhere. But I just feel in a learning environment for a child who needs, real skill building in the socialization department, that could be a real issue. So my family really wants to get back to the top-notch schooling that the Portland district provides, but we're coming to realize that the hybrid model is not going to be the option for us, even though we really want to be back in the school. So I think that we're having to choose, the online option from what we've learned at this point. It's not what we want. So I just wanted to share that perspective as a family that would be back 5 days a week for a full school day if that was being offered. But I don't think the hybrid model is going to suit the particular needs of my son. So again, thank you everybody for what you're doing and the choices that you're making. I know my family really appreciates the Portland Public Schools and how awesome you all are, and we're eager to get back into some semblance of normal schooling. So thank you.
Thank you, Avery. Excuse me. Next, we'll go to Lydia Stein. Lydia?
My name is Lydia Stein. I live on Gray Street, and I'm an incoming senior at Portland High School. I've been in Portland Public Schools since kindergarten. I have valued my education and time in the Portland Public Schools. I am in the top part of my class and involved in many extracurriculars and sports. It is a huge mistake to not let students back in the schools. Not including grades 10 through 12 in the plan is not just and cruel. Academically, I barely learned anything from last year's online learning, and I fear that the same will happen this year. I am planning for college and will not be prepared for the rigor of college after taking online classes at Portland. I am angry and confused on why grades 10 through 12 cannot resume academics in the building for even as little as 2 days in a week. How can you expect us to learn to write at a college level, perform calculus, and complete labs from our houses? Not just that, but juniors and seniors need help with the college process from teachers in person. Most students do not have the external resources to apply to college and get extra help. We need to meet with teachers and guidance counselors in person. The all virtual plan also undermines our mental health. Grades 10 through 12 already have the most mental health problems, and sitting in our rooms in isolation on screens for 5 days a week for hours a day will add to many pre-existing problems. Out of any grade, we need the most social interaction for our development, and if we continue with online learning, I can guarantee that there will be a spike in substance abuse, anxiety, and depression among grades 10 through 12. Offering only a learning center model where we can sign up to meet with individual teachers will not give us nearly enough. Some teachers are not even going to be physically at school, so we can't meet with them. Students not only need help from teachers, but time with peers. Only the motivated students will make the effort to come to the Learning Center. Students who are suffering from mental health, including depression from isolation during their remote learning, will not make the effort to come to school for the 2-hour and 15-minute Learning Center. All high school students deserve a chance for some in-person learning with teachers and peers. I also understand that Casco Bay will be having 2 in-person afternoons per week of instruction. Portland schools must be equitable. We must offer it at Portland and Deering. We are not Florida or Texas. Maine has some of the lowest cases. If South Portland, who has more students than any of the high schools in Portland, can reopen 2 days a week, then why can't we? Oxford Hills has over 1,000 students, and they've figured it out. Westbrook and Falmouth, the number 2 and number 3 zip codes, are having in-person instruction. I have always been proud to be a Bulldog at Portland, but right thank you for your time.
Thank you, Lydia. Okay, so next we're going to Claudia Mejia. Claudia? Claudia Mejia?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. Sorry, I had a problem with my microphone. Hi, my name is Claudia. I am a teacher. Thank you. I just want to say thank you to Lydia, just the person who spoke before. That was very powerful, and I also want to thank the board for all this information that you accumulate and presented. It has been very informative, and I learned a lot through these couple of nights. I work at LICET in the immersion program. I teach kindergarten, and I'm ready to go back. I want to see my students. I want to greet them. I want to build relationship. I feel like for early elementary, it's very important for my students to see me in the classroom. I did this since March. My class were ready to go online, but because we already had a relationship built, they knew me, they knew my management in the class, so it was very smooth. So I'm so worried that if I don't start in September with my class or in August, which any date, I'm not going to have that same impact for my students. They are only kindergarten, I know. They are not going to Harvard or Stanford right now, I know that. But I feel that if I don't have them face to face, I don't know. So for me, that's crucial. Now, the other thing I want for the people at the district to understand the immersion program, that to think about those students who don't want to go back to the classroom and they only want to stay online. I want you to consider us as a team in the immersion, that we will need support. And you need to find that support for us, because most of us will stay in the classrooms, but I'm worried for those who are going to do online. So I need you to support us in that way. And I want to thank you for your time, and I want to tell you that we want to also support the school district, but it has to come both ways. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Claudia. Okay, next we're going to Judy Harris. Judy?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. My name is Judy Harris. I am a proud teacher at Talbot School, and I also live in the Talbot neighborhood. I want to first off say thank you to all of you who are putting in such a lot of hard work and being really thoughtful, thinking about our children, thinking about our families, thinking about us staff. It is appreciated, and in conversations I've had with friends who teach in other districts, I know it is not necessarily happening in other places, and that makes me appreciate you that much more. When thinking about whether to start in hybrid or remote, my opinion changes with the person I'm talking to, with the article I'm reading, with the knowledge that I have of how my mom's health is doing. I'm scared. I am terrified that one of the amazing children that I know and teach is going to get sick, or that someone from their families is, and that we could lose them. I'm terrified to be a remote teacher, because that is not something I got into teaching to do, and it's not something that I feel that I am an expert in. I know that no matter what you vote today, I will show up and I will work my butt off for my students, because that is what I do as a teacher. I want us all to be safe. I want to be able to see the smiles on my students' faces, whether that's in person or remote. But I also want everyone out there to remember that what we did in the spring was emergency learning. We left school on Friday the 13th and did not return. And we didn't have a lot of prep time for that. Whatever you vote on tonight, the amazing colleagues that I work with in this district, we are going to work our butts off and make sure that we can present the best education that we possibly can, using the formats in front of us, using the tools at our hands, and for our students. That's what we do. It's not easy, often not fun doing all that planning and prep work, but it's what we do. I don't know whether I want you to vote yes or no on the hybrid plan, because there's so many personal factors for me. If I'm back with my students, I can't go home and visit my parents, and my mom has been sick all year. And that's a big deal for me. But I also want to be with my students. I want to see their smiles as they figure out how to multiply fractions and how cool it is. There is nothing better in the world than seeing that. So I don't know what to advise you in this, but thank you so much for listening to everyone and considering all these factors carefully. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Appreciate it. Next, we're going to Nelly.
Nelly?
Nelly?
Can you unmute her, please, Mr. Rodriguez?
I'm looking for her on the screen. Hold on.
Nelly, tem botãozinho embaixo do seu nome que você pode selecionar para tirar do mudo.
Are we going to be able to hear her or only the interpreter?
She's there.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Nelly, we can hear you.
Yes. Ok, Julian. Primeiro quero dizer obrigado a todos pelo trabalho que vocês estão a fazer.
First of all, I wanted to thank you all for the work that you are doing.
Mas a minha preocupação é, eu sou a mãe, eu vivo no 1375 Forest Avenue.
I live on 1375 Forest Avenue. I am a mom.
Yeah, Poland. Eu tenho 3 filhos.
I have 3 children.
E o segundo é autistic.
And my second child is autistic.
Ele precisa de cuidado especial para ele.
He needs special care.
Com esse sistema de ter o remote learning, eu acho que não está a ajudar.
With this remote learning system, it's not helping, I don't think.
Porque os 3 meses que nós passamos, março até o junho, principalmente para meu segundo filho, era muito difícil.
Because the period we spent from March to June, especially for my second child, that was really, really hard.
E agora que estão a falar 2 dias da escola, 3 dias em casa. Eu tenho 3 filhos. Gostaria de saber, eles todos vão na escola no mesmo dia ou vai ter dia diferente?
And something that I'm wondering and I'd like to know is, because I have 3 children, will they all go to school on the same days, now that there's going to be 2 days in school and 3 days at home?
Porque o primeiro ano vai começar o middle school e os 2 ficam no elementary school.
Because my first child is going to start middle school and the 2 little ones are in elementary school.
E eu trabalho, vai ser muito difícil. Como que vou conseguir fazer isso se não vão na escola no mesmo dia? Como ficar em casa? Não tem childcare, não tem nada. Acho que na escola é melhor.
I work, so, you know, if they're going to go to school 2 days and the other one's going to school in a different day, they can't be staying at home. I don't have childcare, so it would be really difficult. I think being in school is much better.
E para meu filho, o segundo que tem problema, eu não tenho capacidade de lhe dar tudo o que ele precisa. Por exemplo,
and for my second child,
tudo que ele precisa para se manter focus, não sei como fazer, é muito difícil.
And my second child, all the services that he needs, I have no means of providing that for him. He needs OT, he needs speech. I'm not prepared for those, to give him those services. It'll be really, really hard.
Você já está a pensar para as crianças que têm esse tipo de trabalho, esse tipo de problema, como que eles vão ficar, se ficarem mais em casa?
So I don't know if you have that in mind, like people with children with these needs, what are they going to do if they stay more at home?
A outra preocupação, eu sei que com o COVID-19 tem a mesma sintoma que nós temos, principalmente no fall, like flu, gripe, febre, não sei. Às vezes acontece, criança está na escola, tem febre, te liga. Nós já temos muito problema no trabalho.
So another thing that I wanted to say is, like, sometimes during the fall, kids present many symptoms that are similar to those of COVID-19. So, like, if a child is going to have a fever or some other thing like that, the school will be calling us all the time and we start getting in trouble at work. I don't know what that's going to be like.
Não sei como que eles estão a ver isso, como que isso vai estar, ou como que eles estão a planejar, porque it's not easy.
So what is that you're planning for those situations, because it's not easy.
Yeah. Ficar em casa é complicado. As crianças não estão a aprender nada. Uma hora para ele fazer todo o trabalho.
Yeah, staying at home is complicated. The kids were not really learning much. It's very complicated.
Nelly, we have about 15 more seconds left of your time.
Terminou, Nelly?
Ok, eu queria falar sobre obrigado, mas isso era a minha preocupação. Eu sei que estão a trabalhar duro e acho que vamos chegar numa boa conclusão. Muito obrigada.
So I just wanted to say thank you, and that's it. I think you're working really hard, and I think we'll get to a good conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you, Nelly. And again, Nelly, like I've told other people, it's hard to address everyone's individual questions, but we'll try to cover a lot of the information that comes up during our discussion. And even some of the questions that you answered about how your children will stay together have been addressed. So we'll definitely try to address the questions that you raised, and they're significant and very important for us to be clear about. Next. Next, we're going to go to Erin Green.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, my name is Erin Green. I live on Dakota Street. I have both an incoming 5th grader and a new kindergartner at Lyseth School, a school which we have been very happy to attend for the last several years. I was wondering, as of August 17th, the risk score for the state of Maine has been raised to yellow from green due to recent disease growth in the state. I'm hopeful that this has been or will be considered at this point in relation to opening the schools. I'd also like to mention that information has not been delivered relating to integrating students back into the classroom from virtual learning, whether that's in October or a later date, depending on family choice or a district decision. My concern lies with families who choose to keep their students home for the first part of the school year, and then for whatever reason, they want to go to in-person learning. How will they be integrated into the appropriate classroom, and will they be integrated into a classroom with their peers, or will they still be kept with a remote learning teacher? So that information has not been addressed, and I did want to point out the information from August 17th because it was my understanding that the risk score that everyone has been working from was several days old. I appreciate all the information that everyone has been providing, and we appreciate the opportunity to speak and share our concerns at this meeting. And thank you very much for all your hard work and your time.
Thank you, Erin. Excuse me. Next, we're going to Gavin Gilder. Skip Glider. I'm so sorry, Mr. Glider. I know who you are. I'm so sorry. I put the wrong emphasis. Gavin?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Sorry about messing up your name.
No worries. My name is Gavin Glider. I live on Whiteburn Road in South Portland, and I'm a social studies teacher at Portland High School. First of all, I want to thank you to everyone who's been involved in this process. I know it is certainly not easy at all. This has been a really tough time to be a teacher. I am sad. I'm disheartened. I suffer from panic attacks that I've never had in my life before. It's tough when you see NFL players being applauded as heroes for taking $300,000 to not do to play, which is what they're paid to do, while teachers receive death threats for advocating for our own safety. The other day, a teenager said to me, I really hope we get to go back to school in person so I can see my friends for a few weeks before we all get sick and have to go remote for the rest of the year. I can appreciate that because I watch how different groups of people handle this situation. And when I see teenagers in the community not wearing masks and not social distancing and not doing these things that we're going to ask them to do in school, many of them are going to do them in school. But when we have these desks at 3 feet apart in rooms, my classroom through most of October is about 85 degrees most of the time. So they're going to be drenched in sweat. These masks don't work when they're wet. They're 3 feet apart. The science shows that people over the age of 10, from 10 to 49, contract and infect at equal rates. So we're inviting situations where that person is right. If we do go back in person, she will get to see her friends for a couple weeks before people get sick and we have to go home. When we left for remote learning in March, as has been said a few times, that was an emergency. We had to do the best we could as fast as we could. I worked from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. most days, Monday through Friday, and then spent good parts of my weekends answering emails. I taught synchronously and asynchronously. I graded, I recorded help videos. I did everything I could as we figured out how to try to do remote learning. The situation we're facing going into this school year is one of uncertainty. I can't promise anything for any other teacher, but what I can tell you as a professional educator...
Adam, you have about 5 seconds left.
Okay, is that if you give us this opportunity to start planning for robust remote curriculum right now, you make the choice to let us start the year remote right now, you're going to get a real education. It's going to not be the same as in person, but it's going to be a very, very good education because we'll be safe and we can focus on our jobs. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we're going to Sarah Sweeney.
Hello. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can, Sarah. Go ahead.
Yeah, so this is Sarah Sweeney. We live at 121 Deepwood Drive, and we have a child at Lyseth and a child at Moore. Again, thank you to everyone who has worked tirelessly on this proposal. However, it seems that despite everyone's best efforts, there are still more questions than answers. If the district starts in full remote model, most of these problems would be alleviated. Teachers will not need ADA accommodations, and we will be able to keep our fully qualified teachers. Teachers will not be split between teaching in person and to their class who is remote on the same day. Splitting teachers like this will not provide quality education. And then I just have some other concerns. I'm just going to list those now. It was said that there are many unfilled teacher spots in this plan, including ELL and specials teachers. It doesn't seem that a plan with holes like this should be proposed, honestly. I'm concerned that this plan will not be translated soon enough for families to make an informed decision by Monday who are not English-speaking families. I am concerned that if teachers ignore parts of the layered safety plan to tie a shoe or comfort an upset student, the protections in place will not work. I am concerned that outdoor classrooms will not be utilized effectively. For example, 2 outdoor classrooms for a school with 13 classrooms does not seem equitable. I am concerned that the very students who are trying to get into the schools will choose remote academy, defeating your whole purpose of proposing this hybrid model. Based on the survey of student families, to which only 50% of families responded, 51% of economically disadvantaged families and 26% of Black or African American families said they would opt for full remote. I am concerned there is no plan to reintegrate the remote learners. I'm concerned about how teacher sick leave will be affected if the teacher needs to stay home because they have a symptom. What if they need to go care for a sick family member out of state and then have to quarantine when they get back? I am concerned that if kids are back in school and are disciplined for trying to give their friend a hug, they will be confused and any social emotional benefit of being in school will be negated. Please consider opening in a remote learning setting for everyone and supplement that learning with once a week in-person meetings to provide the connection needed for successful learning. I truly believe, like Gavin just said, that if teachers and staff are given the time and resources to prepare, that remote learning can be successful. Thank you for your time and good luck with the rest of the meeting.
Thank you, Sarah. I think earlier, before I got to Sarah, I think I might have skipped someone and inadvertently lowered their hand, which knocked them to the bottom. So I'm going to try to bring them back up because actually that was about 2 speakers before Sarah. So that was Ina. Where is she?
It's Ina Demers.
Yeah, I'm looking for her name because her hand went back down. I don't see her name now.
She's there if you search.
Yeah, I'm searching. People are. We have to promote her to panelist. That's why. All right. Hello.
Hi.
There we go. All right, we can hear you.
Okay, good. Thank you. Ina Demers. I live on 4 Gorham Street in Wiscasset. However, I'm an educator at Reiki School. Thank you to all who have done so much work to do this, okay? I want to work, the reason I want to work in Portland and stay in Portland is because of the uniqueness of Portland and the diversity. However, I'd like to remind everybody who can hear me that this pandemic is not permanent. It's temporary. We managed remote learning from March to June successfully, even if it were just at the last minute. So what is any academic loss compared to a loss of life? I just want everybody to think about that. I hope we won't lose anybody. However, I would also like to ask you, I don't need any answers, what a K classroom will look like. K students will miss their moms, their dads. They would be scared. They see people who they have not seen, they are not familiar with, and they will be crying. With social distancing, how can we adults support them? How can we give them a hug? We can't even get near them. We need to tell them, little kids crying, you need to stay in your seat. Don't move. What kind of a social, emotional feeling does the children get? So together, I want to thank Sarah Sweeney and I believe somebody else before that. I urge you to keep school remotely because that's the safest thing. The rate of cases in Cumberland County is high. So please think about the emotional pain when we can't comfort our students. Thank you for listening. And please, I urge you to keep the learning at remote. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, we're going to Annie.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Annie Dalphin. I live on Bramhall Street in Portland. I've been at Portland Public Schools at Presumscott Elementary School for 12 years. Elementary teachers are not giving lip service when we call ourselves a learning community. We really are a community. I know every single teacher on my staff very well. I'm the union rep, I'm the BSC, I'm the equity leader, and I serve on my leadership team. I know every teacher and staff member connected to an elementary school in the district feels this way. We always are a tight teaching and supportive community. Over the years, through staff professional development, we have built a very highly trained staff, and we've built a common language about teaching and learning. I'm concerned about the people goal in the Presumscott Promise. I'm hearing Barb Stoddard, who I admire and respect, explain to me that many educators and staff at my school, and all the schools, are going to have to decide whether to risk their health or lose their job during an economic crisis and a pandemic. These are not people who are feeling nervous to go to work. They're staff members that have health or family reasons for requesting flexible work arrangements. We don't have enough remote academy positions to save all these folks. I'm hearing that we will have to hire 10 full-time specialists, 6.5 ELL teachers, just to make the hybrid model work, as well as backfill a tremendous amount of staff positions across the district, which means a huge disruption to our work as a school community. I'm wondering what's going to happen when the pandemic is over. How is the district going to get all these talented teachers back? I can't believe that you would potentially risk losing me, a national board certified teacher with a master's degree in education and 12 years of experience, and potentially hire someone without even an education degree at all, just for an effort for this experimental hybrid. When allergy and cold and flu season hits and everyone is having symptoms, won't we have to go full remote anyway? Are we going to scare away a staff I love and you've nurtured and trained for years? The pandemic won't be forever, but after the pandemic is over, the staff at Portland Public Schools will not be the same. We did a great job connecting with students over Google Meets, especially as we reflected and tried new things. I believe we can do remote well. Can't we just go remote with compassionate exemptions for special ed and IELD students? Just bring back the most vulnerable? We could certainly safely staff a limited population of students full-time back at school while still keeping our staff intact with the majority learning in remote. We can still feed the kids. Can't we continue to deliver food to people's homes? We did it all summer. I was one of
you have about 5 seconds to go.
Great. I was one of the volunteers that delivered food to Portland Public School students this summer. Please consider that goal, the Portland people goal, when you make your decision. I love teaching in Portland. Thank you.
Thank you, Annie. Okay, next we're going to Zev Bliss.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, my name is Zev Bliss. I live on Winding Way. Sarah, I'll wave hi to you when I walk Rocky later this evening. To everybody, thank you for the work you've all done on this issue. It's really difficult, and it's clear you've done very thoughtful and dedicated work. Maine and Portland are doing a much better job than almost anywhere else in the country. I really wouldn't trade the city for anywhere else. And I really don't want us to mess that up. In the past 5 days, the Portland Public Schools Facebook page has referred to the Superintendent Botana's proposed plan as a hybrid plan several times. That was something that was emphasized by Superintendent Botana last night when he was explaining it. He said that the plan is more conservative than what's required. First of all, the rating for Maine has been raised to yellow, as someone pointed out earlier. And secondly, I will be student teaching with a second grade teacher this year, and for us, the proposed plan can only be called hybrid in the very loosest sense of the word. It's hybrid for 2 weeks, and then the plan is to move elementary to full-time in person. That is not hybrid. Additionally, last night, Derek Pierce, someone who I admire greatly, I was really lucky to have him as my principal in high school, said that Portland is closer to Denmark than to Georgia. I would really love for this to be true, and I'm certain that what he meant was aspirational rather than descriptive. But when you're thinking about this plan and making contingencies, I hope you remember to face the reality that we live in the United States with all that entails. Things are open that should not be open. People are doing things they shouldn't. Nobody's getting the help they need with housing and job security or healthcare. People are opening things because, oh, it's time things normally open, not because we're in a safe place. This includes schools. We're not Denmark. And if we want to show that we're not Georgia either, we can show that by listening to our teachers, delaying further, or starting remotely. We must prioritize safety and give time to train, hire, prepare, and wait for risk to decrease. It's infinitely easier to bring a student up to grade level after imperfect online education than to deal with the trauma of sickness and death. As much as I detest the idea of not being with students or putting a childcare burden on families, the only thing I would hate more would be putting a disease burden on families. And I'll remind you that Maine's racial virus disparity is the worst in the nation. Last time we went remote, it was an emergency. We could start hybrid, or for elementary schools, move to full-time in 2 weeks. And then we could go to emergency distance learning again. Or we could do an excellent job beginning with remote learning. I urge board members to remember that this is a proposal. I've only heard one board member speak of changes. It seems like people are asking questions with the intent that they will vote yes. And I really want us to be carefully considering what we're doing. And I urge you to prioritize safety. Thank you.
Thank you, Seb. Next, we're going to Audrey Bartholomew.
Hi, my name is Audrey. I live at 32 Glenhaven Road West. I am a former teacher. I currently prepare teachers at a local university, and I also have 2 children in the Portland School District at Rowe. I have a 5th grader and an incoming kindergartner. I did not prepare remarks, so I'm probably going to regret how scattered I'm going to be, but I do feel like I want to make some comments. First, I want to thank everybody for all the hard work that they've put in. I want to thank the board members who have asked questions and advocated and really tried to dig into the plan. I want to thank the district for using an informed and data-based information to sort of set the stage. And I also want to just specifically thank Sarah Thompson for asking about students and about the possibility of restraints and behaviors increasing. I think that's something that we need to think about. I did send a letter last week to the board members advocating, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago, advocating for some in-person instruction. And I just wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about that from a perspective of my own kids. I have a kindergartner who, or an incoming kindergartner who receives special ed services. And I also, as I said, prepare teachers. So I know how important the work that teachers do. I am a teacher's champion. I will never stop. The teachers are my hero. I think what they do is so important. And what kids need is not what remote instruction can give them. I also want to advocate for kids with disabilities. I really appreciated Nellie, the mom, making comments, someone who had a second grader who has autism. You know, she can say it better than I can, but I spend a lot of time with parents. I'm an advocate for families of kids with disabilities, and I see the impact that moving remote has made on them, on their families, on the kids. And I do appreciate the idea that, you know, this is not permanent, that this is not going to be forever. But think about the time lost and the impact that it has on kids who have significant learning and behavioral challenges. It just blows my mind. I'm not going to lie, when you showed that video of the kids, you know, the video of the kids going to school with the masks, I started crying, thinking about my kindergartner going into school and having to experience this. It is such an emotional, it's so emotional for me, but I know that it's so important for kids to have in-person instruction. And I would just ask, finally, my last request is just to not consider that remote as inevitable. I don't believe that. We thought a lot of things back in March that haven't happened. I don't believe that remote is inevitable. And I'm asking you, please don't give up before you need to. So thank you.
Thank you, Audrey. Okay, next, Nicole Myers.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Nicole. Go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Nicole Myers. I'm an ILD teacher at King Middle School, and I live in Portland. A lot of teachers can probably relate. At this time of year, my belly is usually filled with butterflies in anticipation of starting school. Meeting or reuniting with students and making plans for decorating my classroom, playing games, icebreakers, scavenger hunts through Daring Oaks, distributing school supplies, setting norms as a community, starting to build trust in crew with courageous conversations, collaborating with my colleagues. But tonight I come before you with a heavy heart. My butterflies are not like rocks, sitting in the pit of my stomach, and I toss and turn at night with anxiety as I play out the scenarios of what may be about to unfold. As I have viewed and listened closely to your proposal and discussions, I have come to equate what I'm witnessing are folks desperately trying to rebuild a torn apart structure while standing in the eye of a hurricane. We are all being put in an impossible situation. I strongly agree that it is extremely essential that students come back to in-person learning. We love our students and their families. Let me say it again, we love our students. We long to be back doing our jobs with the utmost pride and integrity. We hold ourselves to the highest of standards, and we are committed to our philosophy of teaching and our dedication to the art of lifelong learning. But we too struggle to understand and make meaning of this unprecedented moment, and many of us find ourselves afraid, confused, saddened, and overwhelmed. We too are in mourning. We too have to return safely in a manner that allows us to maintain our dignity and in our profession and roles and expertise. We too want to go home well and not bring illness to our families and communities. We too do not want to stare at an empty chair knowing that a child had tested positive for COVID and worry whether or not they will return to school. I think it is vital to acknowledge that unlike any other profession or responsibility, other maybe than parenthood, we as educators are constantly transmitting how we feel to our clients, our students, your children. Like no other profession, because of the amount of time we are with students and the close relationships we build with kids, our emotions are completely transparent to them, as their emotions and insecurities are to us. How we feel internally will transfer to our students. How we feel internally will affect our professional performance. How we feel internally will wear on us all. Your proposal is robust and thorough, and we so appreciate you. I do believe there will come a time to implement many parts of your proposal. I do not envy the decisions you are charged with making tonight. I thank and value each of you and your lives and your children's lives and your loved ones' lives. I'm asking that you please extend compassion and grace upon us. I hope we find some peace and rest tonight in whatever decision this body comes to make. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Next, we're going to go, the screen name says TSVETA. This is Vita.
Hi there. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. Hello, everyone. My name is Sveta. Can you hear me again? Something happened.
Yes, we can. Go.
I'm a parent that lives on Goodrich Ave in Portland, and I have two children, one in elementary and one in middle school. And I want to start by saying how we appreciate everything that you do, and we've been sitting on the meetings, and hopefully I've caught everything and I'm not redundant with my comments or questions. I just wanted to say, assuming that Superintendent Butana's plan is approved, first I wanted to recognize that thank you for not going fully green, but going yellow. However, I feel like for elementary being moved to green potentially only a month later, maybe too soon. However, the remote days that we might get, they shouldn't be the same as the imperfect spring emergency learning that we got. It did seem to me academically incomplete, a little scattered and confusing, especially to my little child. And I was wondering why not having teacher instruction on Zoom daily for the class, and the class being present, especially if we're going to have the technology to support that, as if the students are actually in class. And my last comment here, and I've been asking this a lot, but is it feasible at all for sneeze guards, maybe a three-way sneeze guard at every desk, not just in the art room, to be installed for every student, every room and every little desk, just to make sure that we increase the safety for both the teachers and our students. That's all, and thank you again so much for everything that you do.
Thank you. Next, we're going to Lex Jackson.
Hey, my name is Lex Jackson. I use the pronouns he or they. I live on Turner Street in Portland, and I'm a PPS employee. I was an employee in the spring when we transitioned to remote learning, and I worked for the extended school year over the summer with functional life skills students in grades K through 2. And I just want to say that I found that remote learning has drastically improved since our transition in the spring. Students are better at it, families are better at it, teachers are better at it. And I have watched students learn new habits and strategies for effective remote learning. I've watched them work towards and even meet their IEP goals. I have watched them strengthen interpersonal relationships and apply their learning to their everyday lives at home. I've watched students thrive, and I'm so much more proud of the remote learning and instruction that we're able to do now after this much practice. My biggest concern about returning to in-person school is that it will disproportionately harm Black Mainers. 29% of Portland Public School students identify as Black or African American. And so we know that according to the COVID tracking project, Black Mainers are 20 times more likely than white Mainers to contract COVID-19. The Washington Post noted that Black people, many of them immigrants, make up less than 2% of Maine's population, but almost a quarter of its coronavirus cases. And according to the 2018 American Community Survey, almost 25% of Black Mainers live here in Portland. I'm also concerned that enforcing social distancing and other COVID-19 precautions will require teachers to police students in their bodies, which is a practice that is inherently racist. And I'd like to note that Black Lives Matter Portland does not support the in-person reopening of Portland Public Schools. I appreciate the good intentions behind prioritizing in-person learning for the students with the most need. I'm concerned that some of the students with the most need are also families with the most need, and that increasing exposure for these students, like ELL students, functional life skills students, is also increasing the risk and exposure for their families and communities. I'm concerned that the superintendent's plan doesn't adequately account for the fact that around 40% of COVID-19 carriers are asymptomatic, and that an even higher percentage aren't even aware that they have the virus. I'm concerned, I appreciate so much about the way that the board and the superintendent have navigated this conversation. I appreciate that you're taking the time to ask and answer all of our questions. I appreciate the emphasis you're putting on social emotional health of students. But I'm concerned that I'm concerned about the emotional impacts of being a part of a community in which one's friends, families, and teachers are getting sick and dying. I don't feel safe returning to in-person school. I feel like I have to choose potentially between my lives and my students' lives and my livelihood. And I urge you to please put our community's health, safety, and lives first. Please keep our community alive, and please support fully remote learning this fall. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Lex. Next, we're going to Florencia Sobral. Florencia?
Hi, I'm Florencia Sobral. I'm the third grade Spanish immersion teacher at LICEP. And the very first thing I want to say is thank you for all the work you put. And I also want to recognize that no matter the way you vote tonight, there's going to be people that are not in agreement or that are upset. So I appreciate the severity of your position. I know you've done really your job in taking everybody into account. I have a concern, and it's not so much a concern as a teacher, but it's a concern as a parent. And I feel like we're losing perspective a little bit about, and I say this because I've been in this position recently, not everybody can afford to stay home with their children because of work. I can't afford to stay home with my children because I want to be at school with your children. So when we think about this voting, we need to take this into consideration. There's people that can't afford to pay for a care program, or there's people that can't afford to stay remote and help their children. And that is very, very important for us to consider. It's not equitable for everyone to be fully remote. I understand and appreciate the dangers. I am scared. I'm scared to go to school. I'm a high-risk group myself, and I'm scared about getting sick. But I understand it's something that we must do at some point. And I appreciate you considering families on this one. And I want to echo what Claudia Mejia said earlier, and that we as teachers need more support for remote. There's language is difficult to teach as it is, not only for the immersion program, but for any kind of program, ELLs as well. And when we're not doing it in person and we're depending on remote, we're losing part of what the essence of our programs are. Again, thank you so much for all the considerations. The last thing is, you have to remember that we have buildings in construction, LICET being one of those, and this will also affect reopening plans. Some of us, we have not been able to even set foot in our classrooms yet. So I know there's a lot of balls up in the air for you guys, but thank you for everything you're doing and the long hours you've put on this.
Thank you, Florencia. Next, Andrea Levinsky.
Hello, my name is Andrea Levinsky. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the Extended Learning Opportunities Coordinator at Portland High School. I live in South Portland. I want to echo what everyone has said. Thank you again for all your hard work and sifting through the copious amounts of feedback you might be getting. I'd like to reiterate a couple of points. I'd really like you to honor so many teachers who are requesting to start the year off remote for everyone. In the recent Portland Education Association survey, only 24.8 respondents said they would be ready to return to in-person learning. That means 7 out of 10 educators are concerned for the health and safety of everyone in the community. That's not only school staff and students, but also family of these folks. Now you might be saying that 80% of teachers in the other survey done by the district said they would come back. Well, that survey only had 2 questions. The two questions I am pulling up right now. Sorry, thought I had them. So the 2 questions were: I plan to return to on-site work when school resumes in August, and I am unable to return to on-site work this fall. So as Florencia just said, she is not unable to return to on-site work this fall. So she and I both had to click, I plan to return to on-site work. And that does not account for people who don't want to return to work, feel uncomfortable returning, have family members who are ill. So again, the only 2 options were I can't come back, or I'm unable to come back, and I plan to come back. So I feel that survey is definitely not representative of what teachers really want. If some students must be in person, please reconsider the prioritization structure. I do believe that with all the state mandated regulations, student learning will not actually be enhanced by being in school. Teachers can't get near students, students can't do group work. But if some students are in school, I really appreciate your wanting to serve ELL students and students with disabilities, but this is not a homogeneous group. Many of these students or their family members may be at higher risk for COVID due to health conditions and/or race. In-person programming must be opt-in, not opt-out. How about prioritizing children of essential workers or students who cannot do remote learning at home for whatever reason? Not enough space in the home, not a positive place to be. At the high school level, prioritizing 9th graders simply doesn't make sense. There's nothing about 9th graders that make them need in-person learning more than other students. Thank you so much for
you have about 5 seconds left.
Thank you so much for your consideration.
Oh, all right. Thank you, Andrea. Next, we're going to Aura Russell-Better.
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, my name's Aura Russell-Better. I live at Arcadia Street in Portland. I have 2 students at Presumpscot School. I'm also a social worker, so the social emotional needs of kids, parents, and staff are really paramount to me in all of these discussions. I want to thank everybody here, PPS staff, the school board, all the parents calling in. This is just a heartbreaking process to watch and be a part of, to be honest. I just want to point out, I know others have said this, but I think we have to keep remembering that what we're dealing with is an immense failure of leadership and systems throughout our society to keep families safe and alive, honestly, in this worldwide pandemic. This is not happening in some countries in the world, we know, and this is not the job of Portland Public Schools to fix. And I understand you're doing everything you possibly can to mitigate and allow students to come back to school safely. But if we were able to allow parents to stay home safely and be able to support themselves, we wouldn't be in this situation. So if I go back to, I've also been all over the place. I was planning to send my kids, want to be able to say that that's a safe thing to do in my community. But what personally my family needs, or what lots of individual family needs, is not what we need to be looking at. What we need to look at is the collective need. And when I hear teachers and beloved teachers from my own child's school talk about how they have to sacrifice themselves and how little we're holding up our educators to be able to care for themselves and their families, having to decide if they'll stay with their job and their health insurance and be able to support their families, I can't accept that. I can't accept that as a parent and a taxpayer and a fellow human. That I can't accept that. And so I land in a place of hearing staff talk about their creativity. I do believe that staff can come up with remote learning that can be creative. We can find ways to give kids that need the social emotional and parents that need the supports. It's not a good long-term plan for kids to be out of school. Absolutely not. But we don't have a way to test children and staff. And to me, thinking of sending kids into these situations and staff into these situations day in and day out, I don't see how this isn't a setup for a potential outbreak. And so I asked to really listen to what a lot of staff people have shared with you tonight. I feel like as a parent, I know what I want for our kids and families, but I also feel like I have to stand in solidarity with.
All right, you have about 5 seconds left.
Thank you. The people who care for our children every day, and think about all together what we can do to have a plan that feels more safe for everybody to come back. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Aura. Okay, next we're going to Rachel Parketer. Rachel? Yes, we can. Not very loudly, though.
Okay, let me try to speak up a little bit more. I apologize. Is that better?
That's a little bit better, yep.
Okay, great. Thank you. My name is Rachel Pargeter. I live on Payson Street in Portland. I have two daughters, one going into 10th grade, one going into 12th. And I, like Aura, support in a remote-only opening. And I actually was initially supporting in-person learning for my teenagers, but I am not going to do that at the expense of teachers. We will lose a tremendous number of teachers, all those backfilled positions that will have to be done for a hybrid model that may or may not actually be better for the students. I understand that the district has a bias for in-person learning, but no studies have been done that show that what the new normal in-person learning is better for students in the long term. This is a very temporary situation. I'm reminded of my father, who actually his family moved to England right after World War II finished. They didn't have school there for over 18 months because everybody was scattered to the winds. Schools had been bombed. They had to really rebuild infrastructure. The teachers were able to get the students back up to grade level in 3 months. And for most students, I think we could do that. And I just want to say that for a high school student, the Learning Center is not the same as in-person instruction. It was made to sound earlier today like it might be. It is not. It's the support system. And I think we're wasting resources trying to do too many things at once. We need to let our teachers be creative, stay remote, stay safe. The only time we're really green is when there's a vaccine. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. All right. So we have, I was getting some messages, some people that were getting bumped off the attendees list of speakers. So I know that because of the written order that we were keeping in the chat, I know there was one person that was kind of lost in the shuffle. So I'm going to try to get to them now. But now I don't see them. Oh, yeah, it's, excuse me. Carol? Sorry, I had the last name here. Carol Eisenberg, I'm sorry. Let me see if I can get it.
Yes, this is Carol Eisenberg. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Sorry about that. I'm not sure what happened, but I saw you earlier at the top of the list, and then you kind of fell off. So
yes, I lost connection momentarily.
Oh, okay. All right, go for it. You have 3 minutes.
Okay, I live on Peaks Island on Ledgewood Street, and thank you for an opportunity to speak. I do not envy any of you the very difficult task you have and the competing pressures between people who are most concerned for safety and people whose needs are so acute to be in person. I just want to address briefly what I consider an ethical concern. Every part of the planning has at all junctures allowed the option for any family to choose to be fully remote, even if there is a hybrid or fully in-person schooling at this time. And that is as it should be. The fact that you are meeting remotely, the fact that we have seen high schools and colleges across the country closing soon after they open, the fact that we have a huge outbreak in Maine at a wedding recently underscore that the risks are very real and they are with us. And people are making very different risk assessments. The ethical concern I have is that you should offer the same choice to all of your faculty and staff. It seems indefensible to me to say to all families that if you judge the risk to be so great that you want to be remote, we will accommodate you, but not to make the same offer to all faculty and staff. And I don't mean people, only those who have conditions that make them eligible for ADA accommodation, but that any of the staff, including many people who have spoken tonight who work for the district, who don't feel safe and are making a risk assessment that it is not a good idea to return, should have the option to work remotely. And I think ethics demand that you treat your faculty and staff at least as well as the students and families, particularly because faculty and staff, because of their age and because of the greater contact hours they would have in a hybrid model, are more at risk than the students. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Okay, next, we're going to, I'm sorry, Tess Conroy. We have to promote him. Tess, can
you hear me?
Yes, we can. You just have to speak up just a little bit, please.
Okay. Hello, my name is Tess Conroy, and I am a rising junior at Portland High School. While I understand how difficult it is to make sure our return to school is safe for everyone, I don't believe it is fair that the proposed plan is going to give the education of 10th to 12th graders last priority. At the workshop yesterday, there was a lengthy discussion of why it is so important for students to have in-person learning. Why do all of these reasons apply only to elementary and middle schoolers and not high schoolers? I think it is absurd to believe that the 12 hours of remote-only instruction in the current plan will adequately make up for standard in-person school. How is barely half of our normal class time going to prepare upperclassmen who are closest to starting college and careers? Where is this going to leave juniors, like myself, on the SAT, or students taking AP exams? I am taking 4 AP classes this year, and I am alarmed by the small amount of class time this plan will give me before my exam. I believe high school students can follow the rules about wearing masks and other restrictions. In fact, many of us already have experience doing this at summer jobs. I know this is a very hard decision and that we are living in an unusual and unprecedented time, but I would just ask you to consider how your decision is going to impact the futures of 10th to 12th graders, and if this remote learning plan is really the best you can do for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Tess. All right, next we're going to Libby Orling.
Yes, hi, thank you. My name is Libby Orline, and I recently moved from Portland to Scarborough at 8 Thurston Lane, but I continue my work for LearningWorks Portland in partnership with 6 elementary schools, Reiki, Talbot, Rowe, Ocean Avenue, Presumpscot, and East End. I do not have biological children in the Portland Public Schools, but I serve the basic academic and social emotional needs of 27 different families throughout this summer, and so I think of them as my family. I want to share that our work this summer has been a positive example of remote learning for elementary age children, especially as none have been shared thus far. Thank you for the prompt responses of board members Adam Burke and Emily Figdor in my recent email sharing our story. We as a team of 10 educators across 6 sites adopted an elementary curriculum for remote learning approach geared toward growth in English language and mathematics. Our program involved weekly supply drop-offs to students' homes with hands-on activities, daily meal delivery, consistent troubleshooting of technological issues, and acting as a liaison between PPS and student families. And quick shout out to Jane McLucas for making that happen for us with the meal delivery. Our staff wore many hats and did it dutifully and beautifully in service of our families. When I heard that there were in-person options for summer camp, I was worried about kids and families signing up for our camp, especially when many of our students do not have childcare during the day, or because both of their parents work or one works the night shift, etc. But our families prize the health and safety of their children above all else, and many opted out of in-person options. We actually had to scale up our approach when we advertised our remote summer camp and had to hire new staff to sufficiently cover the remote learning needs of 106 students across sites. We expected drop-offs and participation, but even in our 6th and last week, we had between 90 and 60% average participation rates in our camp. Claudia, I hear your concerns about student connection, and we had the same concerns, but listen to this success story. We had new students whose staff created connections with over Zoom as young as entering 2nd grade, and welcome new families we could only meet in short passings or when dropping off supplies. Some of our best success stories that I've heard from summer staff come from new students who signed on to Zoom each and every day, ready to learn. We communicated regularly with families using the strategies we know work for families for whom English is not the preferred language. We also created connections between new staff and students who had gone to Learning Works before, using shared experiences and enrichment clubs. We followed guidelines of cognitive science research to develop our program and engaged in one-on-one tutoring using AmeriCorps volunteers to meet acute student needs. I want to highlight that many of our students have lived through more trauma than is typical long before COVID, and yet we reached them, we served them, we filled their unmet needs during a difficult summer none of us will forget.
Vivi, you have about 8 seconds left.
Okay, thank you so much. With remote learning, we do not put children and families at risk. It doesn't have to be emergency learning this time. As Judy and Gavin said, it will require adequate planning and community partners. Thank you so much. Have a great evening.
Thank you, Libby. Okay, next we're going to Sarah O'Barry.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Sarah.
This is Sarah O'Barry. I live on 37 Birchwood Drive, and I work at Portland High School. I want to talk quickly about the CDC recommendations for stable cohorts, which says at the high school level, there should be minimum mixing of student groups, the smallest cohort practicable, and faculty and staff should remain with specific cohorts. Our current structure at Portland High School with this hybrid model and the alpha split will have 2 teams, half of which will come in at a time. And we've gotten our cohort down to 50 students. 50 is a lot more than what we're talking about at the elementary level. 50 is possible because grade 9 is limited in what they can take, and it's their first year of high school. I want to quickly tell you what it looks like for grade 10 and what the cohort would become. If you look at a block 1 class that has 21 students for a grade 10 English class, they go to 12 different classes, second block: health, clay, Spanish, algebra, Latin, ukulele. You get the idea. Each of those classes has 20 students in it. The 50-person cohort, or the 20-person cohort at the start of block 1, has now become a cohort of 243 students. Third block, they go to 13 different classes. Fourth block, they go to 14 different classes. The next CDC guideline I want to talk about is that we have to stay 3 feet apart, even in a green scenario. That means at Portland High, most of the classrooms have a max classroom capacity of 10 students. That's not even half of a class if you split a class in half. In this hybrid model, because of that split, the teachers of 9th grade who will be teaching in person will always have students in front of them, and they will always have a group of students at home that they're trying to teach at the same time remotely. Because the district decided to do their remote academy only for grades K through 8, leaving out 9th grade, we will also have to deal with a fully remote group of students and figure it out with our current staff. I hope you understand that's an impossible task. Educators are incredibly resourceful and resilient. Sometimes we're called superheroes, but we are only human. Think about the quality of instruction that teachers will be able to provide when asked to manage multiple teaching modes at the same time. Remember that in the spring, teachers were told at the high school level to reduce curriculum, relax their expectations, and slow the pace. It was emergency learning, not remote learning. We should focus, as Andrea Levinsky said earlier, on specific student groups, small groups of cohorts.
You have about 10 seconds left.
Faculty and staff can remain together as one cohort, support the remote learning, build relationships, and attend to their social emotional needs. But we should not push to bring all high school students in for in-person instruction. That's heartbreaking to say. I love my students, but it is the right thing to do.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, next we're going to Holly Sheehan.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak. I live on Washington Avenue and I have a 10th grader at Portland High School. The American Academy of Pediatrics affirms that kids should be in school in person, that is what is best for their health. I agree with the superintendent that during a green designation from the state of Maine, that a hybrid model makes sense. And that if our state or our county should go yellow, we should immediately go fully remote. That makes sense. I wish that high schoolers were treated the same as the K to 9th graders in this hybrid model. I'm frankly very concerned about my son's social and emotional health and the isolation he will experience having only online learning. I'm very happy that the plan now has evolved to include a weekly in-person advising time. I truly appreciate that. And I encourage you to find other ways to find opportunities for 10th to 12th graders to have in-person experiences and academic instruction. For example, could you make a cohort out of simply math and English, just 2 classes, and have the other classes be online? And if there's different levels within a math class, say there's some students are honors level and some are college prep, couldn't the teacher just differentiate the way I believe Casco Bay does? So that's what I have to say. So thank you so much for all of your work. I understand you're under tremendous pressure, and I truly appreciate all that you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Holly. Okay, next, the screen name says LLL of Maine and New Hampshire.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, hello, thanks. My name is Jen Rosenthal. I am on Winter Street, and I have a 2nd grader who's going to be starting at Reiki. This is going to be our first time in this school district. So I've heard a lot about your wonderful school and your wonderful teachers, but haven't yet had an experience with them. So I'm looking forward to it. As everyone has said here tonight, I've been watching these meetings I've been watching your meetings for the last couple of months, because it's easy for me as a parent of 3 children to attend Zoom meetings, so I appreciate that. And I see that everybody has been working so hard, and there is just, I know that compared to other districts, I've heard like how this one is sharing so much more information, is being very transparent with everything, and I appreciate that. I have a friend who teaches in a high school in another state, and she was very panicked as her school district was supposed to go in person. And the relief that she had when she finally found out they decided to go fully remote was just, she felt so freed and able to concentrate on making this the best school year for her students without the fear for her family and her health and her children's, the students' health. And so I've been watching the news and reading all the articles, and we all hope that it doesn't get worse in the fall. But with flu season and what's happening to other schools as they're opening and then having to close, it's hard to believe that it won't happen here. And so my thoughts are, what I've been seeing in different groups is that going fully remote allows teachers to concentrate fully on remote learning, putting all this money, time, resources into a robust remote program for everyone. I know that there was I was in another school district and there was definitely a pivot to emergency teaching, and this is a different thing. They have had folks that have had more time to plan, and I'm sure there's folks that are, willing to make it work. The teachers and passion that I'm hearing from the teachers in this school district, I hear the passion in their voices and how much they love teaching, and I'm so glad that they are going to be teaching my child, and I know that they're going to do an amazing job. It sounds like you're going to lose teachers, these great teachers that I've been hearing about. And I think that's very important, as well as the fact that, we all know what was said before about the, discrepancies of different people in our state when it comes to the dangers of COVID. And so I think we need to keep that in mind, especially since Portland is, I don't know its exact numbers, but among the most diverse in the state. So, and of course I believe we are yellow now as a state. So I think that, it's unfortunately we're not moving in the right direction. So that's all I wanted to say. I just hope really that you take that into consideration. All these teachers, all these folks out there that are asking for a fully remote, and of course, that will give you can make plan for those who absolutely need to be in person. I have a friend in another school district.
You have about 5 seconds left.
Okay, and she has to make different decisions for her children because they are accommodating those that have special needs. And so I think that's important as well. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next, we're going to Rebecca Falbo.
Hi, I am Rebecca Falbo. I live in Windham, but I am the Director of Mainstream and Deaf Education Programs for the Maine Education Center for Deaf and Hard of Hearing, Governor Baxter School for the Deaf. And I wanted to tell you all, you need sleep, just like I do, and I can see that you've been working for months and months and have had sleepless nights, and I feel you. I wanted to thank you all for the tremendous amount of work you're doing, and especially for including Governor Baxter School for the Deaf in the planning. Thank you for that. Deb has been enormous help, Deb Mullis, so has Aaron Townsend. So have the principals at East End and Portland High School. Haven't been able to connect yet with Ben Donaldson at Lyman Moore, but I'm sure I will soon. Unfortunately, for the deaf and hard of hearing kids that are in my K-12 program, remote learning just doesn't work for a variety of reasons. We have several families who speak languages other than English, or we have several families who speak English but can't communicate with their children in ASL. We have technology problems. We have, all the problems you have, just in a smaller group of people. I have to tell you, your teachers at all 3 schools have been incredible. They've worked so hard to embed interpreters into the videos that they have made for our kids. Again, though, unfortunately, because if our kids' parents can't help them explain what happened, and our teachers aren't there, our ed techs aren't there to help explain what happened, the kids don't really get it. But the effort your teachers have put forth have been amazing, and you can be really proud. And I will remind Boyd tomorrow that the video we saw tonight needs to have interpreters embedded. I would love to do in-person learning, and we've been working with the Department Ed to figure out how we can do that. But again, it's not really possible. The numbers of our kids, especially at East End, exceeds the space allotment we have. And even if we could have in-person, at this point, I think at last count, 37% of my staff have accommodations and can't even do remote. And of that 30-something percent, 57 of those are all because of daycare issues. So what I wanted to say is, you've got a tough decision. I don't envy your decision, because your decision is going to impact our decision. But you know what? We're all in this together, and we're going to make it work. So thank you very much for letting me speak, and keep up the fight. The good trouble. Thanks.
Thank you, Rebecca. Okay. Next, we're going to Kate Knox. Kate?
Hi, can you hear me, Chair?
Yes, we do.
I apologize for the delay. First, thank you so much to all of you for your time and effort in trying to manage this impossible situation. I've listened, I should say Kate Knox, 76 Old Birch Lane. I have an incoming kindergartner in third grade at LISEF. I've listened to all of the presentations, had conversations with many of you, and I want to say at the outset, I fully support the proposed hybrid model. I also want to acknowledge, the risks are real that we're talking about. I hear the teachers. We all make our own risk assessments. We all make our own assessments about that risk, and I certainly respect anyone who's not comfortable coming in person. But I think the dilemma we're hearing from the teachers is not necessarily unique. We're all dealing with those hard choices at work. And I've certainly had those conversations myself, and so have people who I work with in community. So while I support everyone's individual choice, I feel strongly that a choice that someone makes to not feel comfortable with hybrid learning is their choice, but it shouldn't control my family's choices. I feel comfortable with the hybrid model. I feel comfortable with the proposal as it stands. It's not perfect. It's going to change, but I feel like it's a good proposal for where they are. And I also feel like I'm very clear, if people don't feel safe, then they shouldn't return, and I completely respect that. So I just want to say thank you, and I appreciate all the time and effort here. And maybe just as a last moment, I agree with, I think Carol's observation a couple speakers ago, which was, as flexible as we can be with teachers who are uncomfortable with in-person learning, I would urge the district to honor that discomfort and give teachers the maximum flexibility to work in the way that they're comfortable with. That being said, I'm very comfortable with the hybrid model, and I would urge you to support it. So thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Okay, next, we're going to Michelle Lawless.
Hi, thank you. My name is Michelle Lawless. I'm on Woodford Street in Portland, Maine, and I am the president of the EdTech Union. I want to first thank every educator, social worker, school nurse, custodian, administrator, and staff member who have sacrificed their personal and family time this summer to engage in this very complex and difficult work. While I certainly understand the overwhelming desire to take comfort in the distinction of Maine being the second lowest state for COVID infection rates, board members Rodriguez, Figdor, and Burke have cautioned us in the past against relying on our exceptionalism for decision making. This seems particularly prudent when there is no state that has escaped the very real consequence of death from COVID-19. I'm here tonight to speak on behalf of our ed techs who, perhaps more than any other staff, work the most closely with our students, both physically and emotionally. They love their work and they love their students. And they have been agonizing over the decisions that they've been asked to make for this coming school year, wondering what being in person will look like and what it will mean for them and their families in regards to their safety and well-being. I am heartened by the district's dedication to safety and the ongoing work to establish procedures and protocols. This work is necessary not only for our physical safety, but for the mental and emotional well-being of all our employees, which should be every much a priority as our students' social and emotional well-being. As we've heard, though, this work is going to take time, and I'm not convinced that we can meet all of the safety concerns, staffing needs, and programming objectives by September 14th, which is a mere 15 business days away. The risks involved in getting this right are too severe for us to rush this process. If ever there was a time for us to be deliberate, thoughtful, and measured in our response, now is that time. So for these reasons, I urge you to start school year remotely and dedicate the time that we truly need to ensure the well-being and safety of all members of Portland schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Okay, next, we're going to Jim. Jim? Jim, can you hear us? I'm going to wait on Jim for a little bit and see if he's able to unmute himself.